Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. So, today I'm on the west coast of Scotland in a town called Saltcoats. It's a bit of a strange name, a coat covered in salt. But if we think about it, it's not so unusual. The name comes from the fact that women in medieval times used to bring their kettles here to collect seawater so they could coat fish with salt as a preservative. So I'm standing just looking at the sea right now. I'm also told that this is where my great grandmother came from. So there's no feeling of sentimentality. I mean, the place is brutal. It clearly was once a very popular working town, which had docks for boats coming in and other things. But now it's a huge black spot for unemployment, of course, because we don't have any kind of shipping or boating here. It's also full of, as far as I can see anyway, drug addicts, drunk people, and the ones who aren't drunk or drug addicts seem to be English. I can hear a few English accents there. You might think it's strange that somewhere in the UK would be like this, but to be honest with you, a lot of our towns and villages which were built up around industry, when Margaret Thatcher came in the 80s, she shut everything down, and a lot of our places just never recovered because they were built up around an industry, and there's nothing else there. No new workers came in. People have been kind of left behind, so there's a lot of that here. A lot of people with what seems to be mental illness as well, and it clearly has a high rate of disability, looking at people who are here. So all kinds of problems, but it's very beautiful. It's kind of reminiscent of a time that's gone by, despite the smell of hashish in the air, which I can smell right now, which makes me a bit uncomfortable. The actual scene of the place isn't so bad. So it looks out to a very tiny island sitting in the middle of nowhere, which is called the Ailsa Craig, which is a nature reserve. It's possible to go there. There are some boat trips, but not from here. This place now has no boats which come in or out. None for tourists or anything else. In the 1950s and 60s, people from Glasgow who wanted to escape for a holiday used to get a boat and travel down the water to come to Saltcoats because it was a tourist town in those days for people who wanted a break. But there's no trace of that now. Now, looking around, a lot of buildings boarded up. A lot of for sale signs, some supermarkets, but it still has a kind of grand feel to it. Like the main street is called Countess Street, obviously named after some old countess. I don't know who that was. The dockyards are still there. I can see a long pier where they did work with boats, but there's nothing there now. There's a few people walking around, and that's all. The sea's very calm today, so that's very nice. In the distance ahead of me, I can see the outline of a few little boats, and also of another island, which is called Arran. A lot of birds looking for fish, and there's a very big sundial, which is just next to me here. It's new, obviously a decorative piece, but it's not casting any shadows, so I don't know when it's supposed to work. What else do I see here apart from these very grey walls? Um, yeah, uh, nice sitting area, just if you're old, to sit and reflect for a while by the sea. Although in the winter, this area would be very unforgiving and a little bit wild. Uh, the winter, you have to be careful on the west coast of Scotland because when the sea is rough, it can literally come over the walls and take you away. So if you're walking your dog, it can come and take your pet or take you. There's been numerous deaths here over the years. So you have to be very careful with things like that. So even though it's beautiful, I'm actually standing way above the sea. And there's a big, big wall which I'm standing on top of. And there's drainage pipes here, so I can see that if the sea does come over, it will be washed back down by these holes in the wall. So beautiful place, but very unforgiving in the winter, I think. You'd have to be very careful. It still has traces of the old days when it was very industrial, and that looks lovely. I mean, there's no reason why they can't have boats coming in and out of here. And who knows, maybe one day they will again. But it's easy to see that people obviously worked here. When I was a boy, I remember there was a fish market because my parents used to come down here. Must have been when I was 5 or 6 years old. They would come down here and a boat would come in and drop fish down. And they could gather up the fish and pay for it. So obviously it was a tradition in the old days to have fresh fish, to buy fish from the fish market. But now, of course, everything is pre-packed in the supermarkets, and we don't have any way of buying fresh things like that. When I was a boy, there were fishmongers in most towns. They've all gone. You still see some butchers, but I haven't seen a fish shop or a fishmonger for some time. I think some of the supermarkets might still offer fresh fish, but it wouldn't be local. That would be imported, so frozen and then defrosted and sold as fresh, I think. Very expensive to buy fish here for some reason, and we're not allowed just to go and fish for it. So, anyway. Well, that's Saltcoats. So, very nice. Full of large black ravens flying overhead, as well as some seagulls. And when they're very hungry, they sometimes attack people, so you have to be a bit careful with them as well. So if you did watch the coronation earlier today, happy coronation. I hope that the coronation itself, the ceremony, was enjoyable for you. I caught glimpses of it on TV, but they all looked very solemn and sad. I don't know why that is. I mean, you'd think it would be a glorious celebration, but it looked a little bit austere. And that's it. So I'll say goodbye now from Saltcoats. Do have a look in the map or Google it. It's a very depressing place, but still, it's strangely nice. One of the strange things about it was the fact that they have psychic and new age activities here once a month. And I think a lot of towns here now have those. It's just some way of moving on from the more traditional forms of religion. They seem to be becoming quite popular. So it's good that people are at least searching for something, but they still have a long way to go to deal with the poverty here, I think. And that's it. So it's goodbye from me. Until soon. Bye.